This is the Spurscast with your host, Paul Garcia.
And welcome back to another episode of the Spurscast. In today's episode, I'll be discussing the Wemby at the 5 lineup in the Spurs' new starting 5. Let's go ahead and jump right into this episode. So it has been quite a while since I've last recorded a Spurscast episode. It's been a little bit over a week, and the reason for that is because our main topic, which is Wemby at the 5 now in this new Spurs starting lineup, our main topic, the Spurs have only used this lineup in 3 games, so I really wanted to get obviously not a big sample size, but just a bigger sample size than just maybe like 1 or 2 games. So let's first discuss the last 4 games for the Spurs, and then we'll kind of do a deep dive on the Wemby at the 5 lineup. So let's go back to last Wednesday. For the last 4 games, the Spurs are on the road at Minnesota. This was the game that was scheduled since the Spurs did and the Wolves didn't make it into the in-season tournament. So the Spurs are on the road. They led for most of the first half, but then the Wolves did take over in the fourth quarter, and they ended up winning by 8. Minnesota did. So it was a close game throughout, though. San Antonio battled there on the road in Minnesota. Then on Friday last week is when we saw our first we saw for the first time that new starting 5 with Wemby at the 5. So the Spurs are hosting the Chicago Bulls in San Antonio. The Spurs led by 13 in this game in the first half, but then the Bulls took over in the second half and they won by 9. Wemby, though, in his first start at the 5, ends up with 21 points, 20 rebounds, and 4 blocks against Chicago. Then on Monday, the Spurs go of this week. The Spurs go on the road to Houston, who the Spurs have beaten this season. And so this was a close game throughout. It was a really rough night to watch offensively. Neither team could really make a shot. So the Spurs specifically shot 5 of 41 from 3, one of their worst 3-point nights of the season. Houston did take, even though it was a close game throughout, Houston did take over in the second half, and they ended up winning by 11. Houston did. And so one good sign for San Antonio in this rough shooting night was that it was their best defensive night of the season. So they held the Rockets under 100 points. That was their first time holding an opponent below 100 points for this season. Wemby again had a really good night there at the 5, where he ends up with 15 points, 18 rebounds, and 5 blocks. And for the Spurs, one bad mark for them was that they set the franchise record with 17 losses in a row on this night once they lost to Houston. And then the most recent game almost felt like, it was a loss. It ends up being a loss for the Spurs, but it was almost like a really bright spot for them, just the way they battled in this game. So the Spurs are hosting the Los Angeles Lakers, who are on the second night of a back-to-back. And so LeBron James was out of this game due to injury. The Lakers pretty much led very comfortably for most of the game. They ended up leading by as many as 20 points in the second half. However, in the final 2 minutes, the Spurs really made things interesting. So let's just kind of do a quick little recap of the last 2 minutes and 14 seconds. So at the 2:14 mark of the game, the Lakers lead by 10. So, you might think it's already over. No, the Spurs really battle back, especially Wemby does a lot here in these closing minutes. So Keldon Johnson gets a tip-in layup to get the lead down. Then the Lakers get a miss. And then on the next possession, the Spurs get Wemby the ball. He makes a spot up 3. Then the Lakers get another miss on the other end. But who is it? I think Brandon gets the defensive rebound. He's about to pass it, and Anthony Davis comes up with the steal, and then Davis finishes that play on the other end for another 2 points. Then on the next possession, the Spurs go back to Wemby. He does Davis is guarding him out on the perimeter. He does like a step back to the side, kind of 3-pointer, and he makes it. And so Brandon ends on another. So the Lakers, I think, turned over, missed the shot again. Spurs get the ball back. Brandon makes another late game layup. And then the Spurs get the ball back again after another stop against the Lakers. But then Wemby gets the free throw line. He makes one of the free throws, but he misses the other. And then so basically with 22 seconds left, the Spurs are only down by 1. So again, this shows the potential that what Wemby can do on the floor there, where he can really turn around a game very quickly within. So again, they were down by 10 with 2 minutes left, 2 minutes 14 seconds, and then with 22 seconds left, they're only down by 1 point. So it just really showed that capability of the Spurs to really battle back there, and the Lakers ended up putting the game away and holding on for that very close win on this night. And then just Wemby again at the 5 in this game, he ends up with 30 points. 13 rebounds and 6 blocks in this game. So Wemby had a very good night there again against the Lakers. And so unfortunately for the Spurs, they were underdogs in all 4 of these games, and they ended up staying underdogs, or they went 0 for 4 in these 4 games. So where are they now through 23 games of the season? They are now 3-20 overall. They are in the midst of an 18-game losing streak right now. They do have a bottom 3 record with the Detroit Pistons and the Washington Wizards. And, it's not the 18 losses in a row is a lot, obviously, but it's not the worst in the league right now. That belongs to the Pistons, who have 21 losses in a row as I record on Thursday evening. So it's no win still on the board since the last podcast, but there are some signs of improvement. So here's what I mean. So right now, where do the Spurs rank overall? This is per Cleaning the Glass. They are still bad on offense, 29th overall on offense, but defensively, they made some big strides here. They're now 24th on defense, according to the Cleaning the Glass. And that was one of those questions that I had, is like, you want to see them make some sort of improvement defensively. And so that was one of my questions. Like I had originally asked you, can they get from like 20 to 25 range? Maybe they won't be an elite defense in year one of Wemby, but can they make some ground up, or just improve a little bit? And if they can hold something like that, just stay within that range. You obviously want them to improve and get better than just 24th defensively, but that's still better improvement than where they were just a few weeks ago when they were like 28th, 29th on defense. So it's only 23 games of the season. It's still very early in the season, but they're showing some improvement on the defensive end. And specifically, according to Cleaning the Glass, they have the 10th best defense in the last 2 weeks. So again, they're showing some on the defensive end, at least that they're showing some improvement. Offense is another story, as we're going to talk about here in a bit. Some unfortunate news for one of the Spurs players, and that is Charles Bassey. He got dealt some unfortunate news this past week. So on Tuesday, the Spurs announced that Bassey underwent an MRI, which revealed a torn left anterior cruciate ligament. And the injury happened last Sunday in an Austin Spurs game when Bassey was playing with Austin. So he's going to be out for the rest of the season. So that's really unfortunate for Bassey. He was playing really well as the backup 5, where he in 19 games he averaged 3.3 points, 73% shooting. One of the he never really missed in the restricted area or the non-restricted area. Anything in the paint Bassey was making this year, even though he didn't take a lot of shots. He was collecting 4 rebounds a game, 1.1 assists, and even like when I plugged in his numbers on the per 36, he was always, besides Wemby was number 1 obviously defensively, but then below him was Bassey, like right there in most of the metrics in terms of per 36 metrics. And so it's just really unfortunate for him. So one of the questions is like, why was he playing in Austin if he was still playing so well in San Antonio? Well, because of this new starting lineup that the Spurs have, where they have Wemby starting at the 5, that meant Zach Collins had to go to the bench, and now Zach Collins becomes the team's backup 5. So there went all of Bassey's minutes. So the Spurs had sent him, Bassey, and Sandro Mamukelashvili down to Austin to get some minutes, and then unfortunately Bassey did get hurt in that game, and he is out for the season. Just basically because of the way the Spurs' new lineups are going, Zach Collins is getting those minutes there at the backup 5. Wemby's there at the starting 5, and then you would expect if they go back to the traditional model that they had originally, which was Wemby and Zach, if that ever goes back to be the starting lineup, that would give Dominic Barlow a very good chance of getting some of those backup 5 minutes. But for now, they're basically starting with Wemby, bringing Zach off the bench, and then just bringing Wemby back in there. They've only been playing with 2 bigs in these last 3 games since they started this new lineup change, the Spurs. And then on a Thursday afternoon, there was a roster move by the Spurs. They made a 2-way change here on their roster. So they waived Serge Rice, who was on a 2-way contract, a guard who went undrafted out of Texas, and he had played pretty well in summer league. He didn't get much of a run, but he had been in Austin, so he gets waived. And then they announced that they signed David Duke Jr. today on that vacant 2-way roster spot. So Duke Jr. has been playing very well in the G League with the Delaware Bluecoats. He's a 6'4" guard who in 11 games with the Bluecoats, he's averaged 21.7 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 4.1 assists. Based on what the lineups that Pop has used right now, which is he's basically using the new starting 5. He has Doug McDermott getting minutes off the bench, Julian Champagnie, Jetty Osmond, Zach Collins, and then Trey Jones. I don't think that what's his name? Duke Jr. would get many minutes just initially, just because we haven't seen Charles Bediako getting minutes. We haven't seen the other player who's on a 2-way contract. We haven't seen a lot of those players get minutes there. Yeah, it is Barlow. Okay, we haven't seen those players get a lot of minutes right now with the San Antonio team. So I do expect Duke Jr. to continue to get some minutes there now with Austin. And so one thing that one of my friends, Matthew Tynan, who runs the was it Substack? Yes, the Substack Corporate Knowledge. He reported that if Serge Rice clears waivers, he is expected to sign end up in Austin on a G League deal. So the Spurs could still have Serge Rice as part of their organization there in Austin. So that was some late some updates on team news for San Antonio. And now our main topic of this episode is let's just kind of dig into the new starting lineup, because this obviously it's an 18-game losing streak. There's not a lot to talk about right now when the team hasn't won a game, and it's already December 14th. Yeah, they haven't won a game since I think it was like November 2nd, the last win. And I was actually going to initially talk about the third quarters, because that's kind of been one of the paths one of the consistent things that's happened for this team is that they play pretty well for a first half, and then the third quarter comes and they lose their lead, and then the other team ends up winning. That's kind of been the theme of these losing streaks, but they've actually been a little bit closer here in some of these third quarters. So that's why I kind of went away from that topic. And now what's really piqued my interest is this new starting lineup, just because it's just like a new group to watch. It's a very small sample size, just 3 games, but I kind of want to dig into some of the numbers and what we're seeing here observation wise with this new starting lineup with Wemby at the 5. So the new starting lineup is Malachi Branham, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan, and Victor Wembanyama. So those are the 5 players. I guess you could say Branham's the point guard in this lineup, but really Branham, Keldon, Sohan, Vassell, they all kind of move the ball around. They all try to initiate the pick and roll, try to do dribble handoff kind of actions, things like that. So they don't have like a set point guard. Basically, whoever has the ball, they kind of initiate the offense in this new system. So in 119 possessions, the Spurs have a minus 9.3 net rating according to Cleaning the Glass, which obviously, minus 9.3 sounds bad, but it's actually not that bad compared to some of the other lineups they had out there on the floor before. So their issue with this lineup right now that we're seeing very early is offense. They're just not a good offensive team. So far in the numbers that they're showing, they have an 89.9 offensive rating according to Cleaning the Glass, which is in the first percentile, which basically means last amongst all league lineups when you look at percentiles. However, they have a very good defense with this lineup. They have a 99.2 defensive rating, which is 95th. That's elite if you can be in the 95th percentile. The only bad thing for this is that it's a very small sample size, just really 3 games. I had looked up the numbers before Pop tried this lineup out, and he had tried it just for a few possessions. It wasn't a lot, and they had bad numbers then. It was like a minus 62 point something. So I really wanted to see what does it look like after a few games. Now 3 games is obviously still very small, but it's just something interesting to watch because we're seeing some success with this lineup right now on the defensive end. So when you compare that, again, as a small sample size, to the lineup that had Zach Collins at the 5, Wemby, Sohan at the point, Vassell, and Keldon, the old starting 5, we would say, that lineup had 192 possessions together, and they were minus 20.7. So again, new lineup, minus 9.3 net rating, old lineup, minus 20.7. So there is some improvement already that we're seeing compared to the previous lineup. So why was this change made? According to an interview that Zach Collins gave, I think I had seen this on Tom Osborne's Twitter feed. Zach had mentioned that basically it was about lack of spacing because the Spurs were struggling from threes. And Zach's a player who had been struggling from the 3-point line. A lot of his threes were attempted at wide open. I think last time I ran my numbers over the weekend, it was like 82% of his threes were attempted wide open. He wasn't getting a point per shot on those shots. And so because of the lack of spacing, which I spent a whole episode on 3-point shooting, me and Colin Reed did a whole breakdown of the Spurs' struggles from 3. Teams that have just been packing the paint, not really guarding anyone, and so that looks like the reason why they wanted to move Zach to the bench and then have Wemby out there as the main big with 4 guards or wings out flanking him. And so again, defensively this is working. Offensively, there's still some struggles. So let's first talk about the offensive stats according to Cleaning the Glass. So overall, when you look at their 4 factors of the offense, they're pretty much bad across the board. None of those that lineup doesn't have many good stats there offensively. One thing I do like that I see, and this is why I want to wait and see, what this lineup looks like in 20 games, just like the first lineup did, like in 20 games, is I really like their shot diet. So here's what I mean by their shot diet. With this current lineup, starting 5, they're really going away from the mid range. They're really just either trying to get into the paint and score at the rim, or they're taking shots from 3. Now the problem though is that they're not making their shots efficiently at all in any of those areas. So they're really struggling with their accuracy in almost all areas on the floor. But again, it's just a 3-game sample size, and a huge chunk of that is that Houston game where they just shot terrible as a team, and even Houston had a rough night shooting the ball. So I do wonder, by game 15, game 20, if Pop is still going with the starting lineup, what do these numbers look like if the percentages start to bounce back? Because again, that's a good sign that they're actually taking a more modern approach with their shot selection if they're going away from the mid range. And you just think of a player like Wemby, a lot of his points right now that he's been scoring as the new starting 5 have been at the rim, because he's either rolling or getting post position down low, or he's popping out and kind of standing out at 3-point arc, and he's not having to settle for some of those mid rangers that he was taking a lot of early on, in most of the season. So that's one part of it. And then of course, if he's spacing out, then there's more avenue for the players to try to penetrate. So again, I kind of wonder what this lineup will look like offensively, the numbers, if the players can start making some shots here. And then, turnover percentage is obviously still an issue, even with this lineup, because they don't have a consistent, they don't have like that traditional point guard out there on the floor. So, different ball handlers are out there and they're still losing the ball. And I'll get into some of the individual player numbers here in a second. But now, and then also one more thing before I go to defense is in the half court, they're also not doing very well. They're scoring 80.6 points per 100 per half court play according to Clean the Glass, which is really bad. So again, offensively, there's still a struggle. I do like the shot selection on offense right now, what's going on. But so let's kind of just wait and see, what do those numbers look like, in a larger sample size. But some of the numbers that look very good in the small sample size are the defensive numbers, like I mentioned. So what are they doing well on defense in this lineup? According to their 4 factors, they have their opponents aren't making a good percentage of their shots either from the 2 or the 3. So their effective field goal percentage, it's in the 85th percentile, really good right there. They're not giving up a lot of second chance points. Their opponent offensive rebounds percentage is very low. That puts the Spurs in the 78th percentile. Again, a very good percentile you want to be in. They're also, with the starting 5, not putting a lot of opponents on the free throw line. Their free throw rate is 82nd percentile, which is again very good if you're in the 80th percentile or above. So they're not putting their opponents on the free throw line. And then they're also just barely over league average in creating turnovers for the other team. So they're in the 57th percentile in opponent turnover percentage. So they are forcing a little bit more turnovers than usual. So when you look at where opponents are shooting against the Spurs in this new lineup, is one good sign is they're completely going away from the rim. They're really not taking a lot of shots at the closest point near the rim. That's in the for opponents, that's in the 9th percentile. They're also taking a lot more floaters and mid rangers. But still a good amount of threes. They are also 64th in the half court defense, which is again above league average right there. And then one thing though, because they're missing shots, the Spurs on offense, teams are still getting out in transition against them in this new lineup. So again, there are some positive defensively. There are some positives defensively. When you just think about this lineup with Keldon, Sohan, Wemby, who is it, Vassell and Branham, they're pretty much, aside from Wemby and Sohan, a lot of those players are kind of like around the same height ranges, and so they can switch defensively 1 through 5 there at multiple positions. And then of course you got Wemby protecting the paint now, and he's in his last like 6 games he's getting like 4 blocks, 1 block, 4, 5, and like 6 blocks. He has some crazy numbers there defensively there at the 5. So again, defensively, it's looking really good with this lineup. But again, we do want to caution that it is a small sample size. And so now let's just look at just again these last 3 games against the Bulls, the Lakers, and I forgot the middle game was the Rockets. Okay, so let's just look at the offensive numbers and the individual players. Some of these numbers in these last 3 games. So Wemby first, he's averaging 22 points on 18.7 shot attempts. He's grabbing 17 rebounds in the last 3 games and also 5 blocks per game. And then we look at his moving the ball, 3 assists to 3.7 turnovers. So still too many turnovers for him, where he's averaging more turnovers than assists. But again, he's really just as the lone big guy out there now, he's really just cleaning up the glass with 17 rebounds per night in these last 3 games. And then of course, like I said, anchoring the paint with 5 blocks, and most of those inside the paint. Keldon Johnson's been playing very well now with this new starting 5, where in the last 3 games, he's averaging 20 points on just 13 shot attempts a night. Really has the 3-ball going. He's shooting like 42% from outside. He's kept the Spurs in games because of his outside shooting. And he's doing a great job too with ball moving. He's averaging 5 assists right now to just 1.3 turnovers is Keldon whenever he does try to, attack the defense and kick out to his teammates. Malachi Branham is averaging 14 points on 10.7 shots. So, also, putting up more points than shot attempts there. And he's also averaging 3 assists to just 2 turnovers. So again, at least one assist better than his turnovers. And so the 2 players, just offensively, again, we're just focusing on offensive here, because again, that's where this lineup is having some issues. Devin Vassell and Jeremy Sohan, who are having some struggles right now in these last 3 games. They're on offense. So Vassell's averaging 12.7 points on 15.3 shot attempts. attempts. So again, very having an inefficient time right now out on the floor, where he's taking 3 more shots than he's actually averaging points. And then also moving the ball, he's doing okay. He's averaging 3.7 assists to just 1.7 turnovers. So that's okay. He's averaging 2 more assists than turnovers. And then Sohan, they're at the I guess you would say the 4 now. He's averaging 5.3 points on 8.7 shot attempts. So it's kind of like Vassell, where he's taking more shots than even getting the points. And then his turnovers are still right there, almost like where he's averaging 3.7 assists to 3 turnovers. So almost the same. He and Wemby were like the team leaders in turnovers for most of the season. And so that's kind of still following the same path there for this team. So again, it's only been 3 games. I'm eager to see where these numbers go after like game 15 or 20. Again, one good sign for the Spurs is that even before they made this lineup change, their defensive numbers are improving overall. And that's a good sign for the team, that they're making, at least on one end of the floor, they're making some improvements here, and that's what you want to see in a what's looking like another developing learning kind of season. But of course, as we see now, wins are still not coming on the board. They're at 18 losses. I know that on Friday, after LeBron sat out on Wednesday, it's probably I haven't seen the Lakers injury report as I'm recording this, but it's I would be shocked if he doesn't play in that game. So I think LeBron might possibly be back, which will be a tougher test for the Spurs to try to get a win. But even though it's 18 losses in a row, again, I think the team feels a little bit better coming off that loss to the Lakers, just because of the way, again, they were down 20, they fight back. So far things are looking really good with that new starting 5 in terms of defensively. They're looking really good there. And then of course Wemby's just being a monster out there with the numbers that he's putting up lately, now that he's the starting 5 for San Antonio. So thanks for taking some time to listen to this episode of the Spurscast. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review on YouTube and your favorite podcast apps. This episode was written, recorded, and produced by Paul Garcia. From all of us at Project Spurs, stay safe and have a great day.